Hello everyone, welcome to my literature club. Today I, Annie, your club president and head of the Sapphic Media Committee, will discuss this semester's required readings. As outlined in your member application and this club's constitution, dues will require 5 handmade bookmarks and this org will require an indefinite active status. We wouldn't want you to leave and contribute to the literacy crisis, right? You won't leave me, right? Spoilers ahead! Hi guys, Normal Annie here. I don't know what that was. What was that? Also, I'm congested right now with allergies, so that's why my voice sounds like this. Anyway, I started off this summer in a sort of slump, cough, depression, but I've more or less gotten out of the worst of it for now. It took me a bit to get back into reading, but when I did, of course, I read about a woman who sends herself into psychosis because of being stuck at home in her room. I read The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, a book that was rediscovered in the second wave feminist movement. It follows a depressed woman who had just given birth being prescribed a rest cure by her doctor husband. The rest cure involved moving into a temporary home, talking to no one but her husband when he came home at the end of the day, no writing or complex thinking except for when she would sneak behind her husband's back to write in a journal, and spending most of her days confined in a bedroom with a barred up window and the most dreadful yellow wallpaper with undulating vines. The woman grows mad, tracing her hands along the walls each night, trying to capture the woman that appeared to be crawling behind the wallpaper until she herself crawls around the room, embodying the imprisoned woman she saw. The story draws on how stripping yourself from intellectual stimulation keeps you blind, unwell, and unsatisfied, and how men have a role in keeping women in that state of oblivion and subordination. With my slump, I hadn't been doing much of anything at all with my days. At one point, you doom scroll so hard you use up all your dopamine receptors. I needed something to do, and reading this book reassured that reading was one thing I could do. Next, I read The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. Lispector is a popular author in book spaces, so I've been meaning to get into her work. I picked up The Hour of the Star earlier in the summer, but didn't pick it back up until later. It follows a restless author writing a story he above all must put down on paper about an unlucky, destitute woman who, even despite being abused, living in poverty, getting cheated on with her coworker, and her eventual death, remained hopeful. It's a short story, but oh my gosh, it's a lot to sift through. It's a story in a story. You cannot read it in one sitting and understand it all. The text is laden with aphorisms that are meant to be sat with and digested before going back. The style Lispector writes in is unforgettable and tortuous, yet rewarding once you ask questions and piece together the ideas dropped throughout her little maze of a story. The next story is Cage by Chu Miao-jin. Chu Miao-jin is one of my favorite authors. She is a Taiwanese lesbian who writes most passionately and, like the literary greats she revered, died through suicide. She left the most compelling, heartstring-twisting love letters sharing in great detail her love and longing for her ex-lover. Anyway, Cage was a story that first describes, in second person, a cage you are running laps in. The bars are big enough for you to slip through, and there's a mirror you avoid on one end. The story follows an arrogant man who was so set up for success he couldn't let himself indulge in a little bit of love. He encounters the woman he met the day the both of them independently tried to kill themselves, and after caring for her, he realized he loved her. The woman confesses her feelings before he could gather the courage to discover his. In the end, he chooses to lose contact with the woman despite loving her, and despite the opportunity to find happiness his high-ranking job and explosive success couldn't give him. He withdraws himself, continuing to run in his cage, avoiding the true desires his reflection confronts him with. Another short story I read was How Does a Single Blade of Grass Thank the Sun by Doretta Lau. I picked it up because of the instant ramen on the cover. The book is filled with several unhinged short stories from the perspective of young Asian Canadians. There's hilarious comedic timing, and it was a palate cleanser after the couple of sad-ish stories. Some of my favorite no-context quotes. Last week, my future self started blasting me with messages about herpes. Today, she escalated to drug-resistant gonorrhea. I think she's trying to tell me that my boyfriend is cheating on me. As I walked down the aisle, the bridesmaids all looked like sausages encased in giant frills. I chose their dresses. I must be a misogynist. The chairman has stenciled "Obey Mao" on the basketball court blacktop. He even included an image based on the portrait of Mao at Tiananmen Square. Some of the neighborhood children thought the tag said "Obey Yao." Okay, back to depression. The next story I read was Mammoth by Eva Baltasar. I picked it up after reading on the back that the protagonist is a lesbian and that the novel is part of the author's lesbian triptych of novels. What the hell? Pure madness / derogatory. I had an ominous vibe from the back of the novel, but I can tell you it's horror. You know how therapists and doctors have unconditional positive regard, that moral rule that you don't let someone's past or personality affect the care you provide, even if they're a murderer, rapist, or racist? Yeah, I didn't have that for this book. I can see how there are some profound messages this book is attempting to evoke, but I'm sorry, I am not going to like a book with the main character killing cats and intentionally fucking men despite being a lesbian. Basically, this woman wants to live life raw, without being tied down to anything, and one of her desires is to be pregnant. She didn't want to sell her soul to a company or depend on anyone for anything. Her reasoning for wanting to be pregnant is kind of unclear. She fantasizes the idea of nurturing life inside her body. Her pursuit of living raw includes moving to the mountains, milking goats and sheep, bathing with a dirty sock and detergent, and working at some restaurant in town where she walks in and helps if needed. She eventually becomes a sex worker for the old man shepherd who lives nearby, and after a year of doing so, becomes pregnant. Despite her dream to be pregnant, she learns that pregnancy is awful and insurmountably painful. She gives up her baby once it's born and realizes that even after living the way she wanted to live, on her own terms, there was no desirable life after all. But I didn't really get that vibe from the book. I couldn't get over the woman's sort of self-sabotaging masochism, such as when she has spontaneous hookups with men she doesn't know, or goes through arduous manual labor. Also, she does interact with women she likes, but when she does, she forces a kiss onto them, these straight girls. Ugh! Oh, speaking of wanting to be pregnant, I'm pregnant. Just kidding. But the main character of our final required reading also wants to be pregnant. Hunchback is by Sao Ichikawa, a woman with congenital myopathy, a genetic condition where the muscles weaken, making breathing and moving difficult. Hunchback follows a woman who also has congenital myopathy. She refers to herself as a hunchback monster. She has a scoliosis that crushes her right lung and prevents her from turning her head to the right. She can stand up from her wheelchair and use her arms for typing and light lifting, but any other movement puts severe strain on her body. Her ventilator helps her breathe, but mucus gets caught in it so much that suffocating as she clears the ventilating tube becomes a normal occurrence. This woman comes from a rich family who left her buildings and a care home in which she resides in her name. She narrates her experience living with her disability. Because she is well off and does not need to worry about an unpredictable future, she spends time online. She pursues online degrees, takes up freelance, smutty writing gigs for a men's erotica forum, and tweets her unfiltered thoughts, such as wanting to get pregnant and have an abortion, just like normal women. One day, one of her caretakers, a young man who is poor and a self-proclaimed beta male, yes, you heard me right, confronts that he knows about her Twitter. They arrange that she will give him $1 million USD if he helps her with her plan to get pregnant so she can have an abortion. After his shift, he comes to her flat and she says she wants to experience giving a blowjob first. Cum proves difficult for her to swallow and she begins to choke severely. He runs off, and for the next few days, she is hospitalized. When she returns, the man resigns and she finds the check that she wrote for him untouched in her drawer. She says, "Right, yes, the appropriate distance between us was one that allowed him to pity me." This book won the Akutagawa Prize, which is an accolade that distinguishes the two categories of literature in Japan, pure literature and mass literature. The fact that a book about a woman with a disability won this prize is an incredible feat for disability justice in Japan. That's all the required readings for this semester. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Literature Club meets again tomorrow. You'll be there, right? Right? Anyway, bye-bye.